One sunny afternoon, several people entered and exited a company building. Among them was a smoking hot diva with 2 separate countries on her chest, and everyone couldn't help but admire her beauty. One Rizless dude tried his luck to Riz, asking if she was new to the company. He tried to flirt by inviting her to the company party, but the hot girl immediately responded by shockingly flashing her wedding ring, making it clear she was already taken. Defeated, the guy lamented the fact that the lady was married, and his friend tried to console him. His friend, surprised he didn't know, told him the girl was Taoju Fukui, the head of the design team. Meanwhile, in the office, someone was slapping away on a keyboard with a visible wedding ring on his finger. It was just some plain-looking dude with black hair and serious loser vibes. His ID badge showed his name, Hara Taeyu, head of the engineering team. Taeyu was handed a task to fix a bug by a team member, but his concentration instantly evaporated the moment Fukui strolled into the office, snuck up behind him, and greeted him by weaponizing her massive mummy milkers. Fukui looked thrilled to see him, but Taeyu, nervous about anyone noticing they were married, quickly typed a message on his screen warning her that someone might find out they were married. Fukui reassured him they wouldn't get caught, but her vibe shifted fast when someone nearby addressed her as team leader and reminded her about a meeting that day. Just like that, she snapped into work mode. With Fukui now focused on work, it was explained that this company had a strict rule: no romantic relationships between employees. Taeyu and Fukui only found this out years after they'd both been hired. When they told the company president they were getting married and proudly said he was the first to know, he just burst out laughing. Then he asked if they knew love was banned at the company. The president explained that since the company was still a startup, relationships could slow down progress. The couple was shocked. They had no idea such a rule even existed. But because they were valuable employees, the president cut them some slack. He let them stay, as long as they kept their marriage a secret. Back in the present, Fukui was busy working on her computer when a colleague invited her to lunch. But she instantly shut the poor idiot down, saying she didn't have time for that and had way more important things to do. And out of nowhere, she spotted some cutie with top-tier honkers chatting it up with her husband. Fukui didn't waste a second. She barged in mid-convo, clearly jealous, and with a serious expression, told Taeyu that it was already time for the lunch break and that he needed to take breaks. The pretty girl, who was a member of Taeyu's team, awkwardly backed off and muttered how strange it was for a team leader from a different department to suddenly show up like that. Later that day in the boardroom, Fukui stood up and announced that the design department meeting was over. As soon as it ended, she headed straight to her husband's office. Seeing he was alone, she immediately pounced on him, unleashing her man-distraction weapons. Taeyu panicked, but Fukui calmly hugged him from behind, telling him everyone had already left and he needed to chill. Relieved, Taeyu sighed and said he'd been so deep in work, he hadn't even noticed the time pass. Fukui responded softly, telling him she was okay with it, and then encouraged him to keep doing his best at work. But Taeyu slumped in his chair and groaned that he still had a mountain of work to get through. He asked if it was okay to just whip up a simple dinner tonight. Since Taeyu was the one who usually handled the house chores, because the man Loki loved it, Fukui offered to take over for once. She said she'd handle the chores and make dinner too. In her head, she thought that if she took care of all the housework, they'd have more time later to break the bed and soak the sheets that night. Later at the supermarket, Fukui grabbed ingredients for dinner. After paying, the cashier asked if she wanted a bag, but she just smirked, said no thanks, and flexed her expensive Gucci purse like a total boss. She casually tossed the groceries inside, including a whole radish, and walked out like she was on a runway. People stared, confused, wondering what logic was behind that move. Back home, Fukui got ready to cook and do the chores. Problem was, she had zero cooking skills, though she hit the internet for some quick tutorials. Then, in a classic domestic fail, she tossed her dress into the dryer instead of the washing machine in a hurry to get everything done. It didn't take long to see she was no natural housewife. The dress shrank in the dryer and ended up too short to wear. The food she was cooking burned to a crisp. Right then, Taeyu walked in and was hit with that smoky, dinner-ruined smell. Trying to console his wife, he suggested they go out to eat since they had the day off tomorrow. Fukui felt a bit crushed for messing things up, but seeing how excited he was, she suddenly hugged him from behind. Taeyu, caught off guard and blushing, asked what was wrong. She softly said she didn't mind eating out but would have loved staying home together. Taeyu couldn't resist her soft voice and her hilly chest pressing into his back, so naturally they headed to the bedroom. That night, the two got real busy. So busy that by the time morning rolled around, they both overslept, completely drained from their activities. That morning, the phone alarm rang at 6:30, and Taeyu sleepily reached over to turn it off. His wife rolled closer to him in bed, gave him a cheerful smile, and greeted him good morning. Taeyu's eyes were immediately drawn to her exposed great pillow divide. Concerned for his beautiful wife's health, he told her to cover up so she wouldn't catch a cold. But Fukui leaned in even closer, saying that if they rubbed skin to skin, they wouldn't feel cold, and then proceeded to bury her husband's face in her bazangas. The poor guy panicked and tried to wiggle free, insisting they'd be late for work, which only seemed to annoy his wife. Nevertheless, Fukui got ready for work, going through her usual morning glam ritual. Afterward, she looked at herself in the mirror, and it was clear this woman could pass for a divine priestess. Just then, she shouted to her husband that something really bad was happening. Taeyu rushed over worried and asked what was wrong. Fukui teased him, claiming the problem was that she was simply too pretty. She got very close and with a soft gaze asked Taeyu if he agreed she was indeed pretty. Taeyu grew nervous, sensing that giving a compliment might trigger something, so he changed the subject and asked if she had changed her perfume. When Fukui confirmed she had, he leaned toward her neck, took a sniff, and said he liked the scent. Fukui became flustered and slightly aroused by the gesture. She shivered and said it was lucky she'd woken up early today. Shortly afterwards, at the company building, Fukui arrived distracted, scrolling through her phone. In the office, some random loser coworker who clearly had a crush on her greeted her with a good morning. But as usual, Fukui didn't pay much attention to the guy. Trying to get her attention, he leaned closer and complimented her perfume, just like her husband had that morning. Fukui immediately got pissed and warned him that she only wore perfume for her husband, and only he was allowed to smell her. Meanwhile, her husband was knocked out at his desk, peacefully sleeping in the office, completely unaware of how lucky he truly was. Later that day, after work, Taeyu was walking up a staircase behind two girls in school uniforms. He was lost in the moment, eyes glued to his phone as he exchanged messages with Fukui on WhatsApp. So distracted by the conversation, he didn't even notice the girls ahead of him. One of them suddenly turned around and saw him on his phone. Without thinking, the foolish girl accused him of taking pictures of their undies. Taeyu immediately denied it, but the girl swore she saw him snap photos and demanded to know why he'd do such a thing. She called him a disgusting virgin and accused him of being so desperate to see a woman that he'd resort to taking pictures of schoolgirls. The commotion drew a passerby who stepped in, asking what was going on. The student quickly explained how Taeyu had supposedly taken photos of their shorts. But right at that moment, Fukui appeared to save her man. She tightly held onto Taeyu's arm, glaring at the scene with a possessive look, and asked what they wanted with her husband. Taeyu just stood there, completely confused, wondering what the heck was going on. When the girls saw Fukui, one of them was stunned by her beauty and asked if that pretty girl was really the goblin's wife. Fukui didn't hesitate to confirm it. With a deadly expression on her face, Fayuki asked again what they wanted with her boo. Intimidated, the girls quickly backed off, saying it must have been a big misunderstanding. At the same time, the nosy passerby thought that if the accused man had a chick like that for a wife, there was no way he would be taking photos of small girls. Shortly afterwards, as the couple arrived home, Taeyu felt relieved and thanked his wife for saving his skin. But Fukui didn't hear a word. She was lost in thought. After a brief pause, she asked her confused husband to wait for her in the bedroom, then hurried into the closet. When she returned, Taeyu was startled by what she was wearing. She had on the school uniform from her younger days, now looking like a full-blown walking thirst trap. Fukui struck a pose, flaunting her outfit to seduce him, and asked if she still looked good in a schoolgirl uniform. Lying on the bed, Taeyu said it brought back memories and asked why she had suddenly decided to wear it. With her enormous balloons squeezed together, Fukui climbed onto her husband's lap and said it was because she didn't want to lose to a younger girl. Pulling him close, she whispered that they'd be having so much fun that night. Going all in on her timid husband, she guided his hand to her balloons and gently squeezed. Taeyu was ready to activate Excaliboner, but his wife suddenly remembered something. She offered to let him take as many pictures as he wanted of her wet mood shorts. This made Taeyu offended, and he said he wasn't into that kind of stuff, and half-jokingly his wife replied that it was a shame he was. Not long after, two well-dressed guys strolled through the city. One of them spotted a girl ahead and remarked on how insanely gorgeous she was. That girl was Fukui, who was totally zoned out, eyes glued to her phone. The guy also commented about how she was blessed with a chest so full it could make any guy go gaga. As usual, Fukui wasn't paying any attention. She was busy reading a message from her husband, who just texted that he'd be there soon to meet her. Suddenly, one of the dudes stepped up, called her a hottie, and confidently asked if she wanted to grab some tea with them. Fukui said no and was about to explain she was waiting for someone when Taeyu showed up, running and sweating, apologizing for being late. The moment the guys saw Taeyu, they burst out laughing. One asked if that was the creepy loser she'd been waiting for. The other laughed harder, saying it was hilarious she was actually dating such a deadbeat. They added that the two of them didn't even look right together. Feeling awkward, Taeyu admitted he couldn't really argue with that. When the guys asked if Fukui wasn't embarrassed to be seen with such a troll, she fired back, defending her husband. She said Taeyu might not wear flashy clothes or dye his hair, but that was exactly what made him cool. One of the guys chuckled and asked if she was serious or just had terrible taste in men. Fukuyi sighed, clearly losing patience. The sharp glare, she told them that if they thought wearing trendy clothes made them fashionable, then their brains should be donated since it was not in use. The guys were caught off guard by her comeback. The one who'd been mocking Taeyu the most got annoyed and snapped, asking what her problem was. Fukuyi fired back, saying she'd actually be embarrassed to be seen hanging around with idiots like them. Just then, Taeyu stepped forward, trying to calm things down. He told the guys they didn't want any trouble. But the first guy, still angry from Fukuyi's insult, reached out his hand, threatening to hurt her if she didn't watch her mouth. Before he could touch her, Taeyu grabbed the guy's wrist. With a firm twist and a sharp tone, he warned him not to lay a hand on his wife and made it clear he was her husband. The pressure surprised the guy so much that he pulled back and fled with his friend, both scared by Taeyu's sudden grip. Taeyu stayed calm and said it was a good thing he'd learned some self-defense for moments like that. Then he reached out his hand to Fukuyi and asked if they could keep going. She smiled and accepted. Later that day, the couple waited for a train at the subway station. As they stood on the platform, Fukuyi said it was nice to get out of the house sometimes and enjoy a little train date. Just then, their train arrived, completely packed. They both looked surprised and guessed there must have been some event in the next city. Inside the crowded train, they stood close, practically pressed against each other. Fukuyi quietly enjoyed the closeness. When Taeyu apologized for not taking the car, she cheerfully said she didn't mind. Thanks to the event and the packed train, they got to stick close together in public. Suddenly, Taeyu started feeling sleepy from days of overtime and little rest. As the train rocked, he lost his balance and face-planted right into his wife's huge chest. Fukuyi didn't seem to mind, but Taeyu jolted awake, panicked, and apologized. To calm him, Fukuyi gently patted his head, smiling as she thanked him for working so hard just so they could have a day out. She caressed his face and told him how much fun she'd had on their date. Seeing Taeyu still looked tired, she offered her bouncy chest as a pillow, but he refused, and they ended their day together. Sometime later, the couple headed to the aquarium to hang out with other couples. Fukuyi enjoyed herself with her husband, watching various fish swim in their tanks. She got so fascinated that she pressed her balls against the glass and said how pretty the fish were. Then she called Taeyu over to take a look. Seeing how excited she was, Taeyu laughed and teased her, saying she was acting like a baby. Fukuyi took offense and argued back, but Taeyu quickly clarified he just meant she looked cute. Pulling out her phone, Fukuyi gently grabbed her shy husband and asked if they could take a photo for memories. But just before snapping it, she suddenly panicked and ducked out of sight. When Taeyu asked what was wrong, Fukuyi revealed that her coworker was also at the aquarium. Taeyu sighted the guy from afar, remembering the guy's name was Tanaka, the same blonde dude who had tried to hit on Fukuyi before. It was clear that if Tanaka found out they were a couple, it could cause serious problems. Though Taeyu suggested they sneak out of the aquarium, but Fukuyi disagreed. She didn't want to ruin their date. They'd come to have fun, and fun was exactly what they'd have. Plus, she pointed out there were tons of people around, so everything would be fine, even though Taeyu wasn't totally convinced. To lighten the mood, Fukuyi insisted they go watch the dolphin show, and Taeyu agreed. As they headed there, Taeyu still felt uneasy and tried to suggest leaving. But before they could, Tanaka approached and asked what they were doing there. Taeyu immediately panicked as Tanaka started questioning if they were together. Thinking quickly, Fukuyi jumped in and said they were there for work. She explained that they were gathering references for a new project and came together because they were both team leaders. Satisfied, Tanaka said there was no way they could be dating anyway. He also mentioned he was on a date with a girl he'd just met. But at that moment, one of the dolphins splashed water on Fayuki. Taeyu noticed this and asked his wife if she was okay with it. With water dripping down her cleavage, Fukuyi complained that her light blouse was soaked. She didn't even notice Tanaka staring at her beach balls with obvious interest, but Taeyu saw and got pissed. He then handed Fukuyi a handkerchief to dry off and warned her that some creep was staring at her like a fool. He told her to cover up his property. Shortly afterward, after watching the dolphin show, the couple started heading home. On the way, Taeyu sighed in relief that Tanaka and the blonde girl hadn't figured out they were married. Then, out of nowhere, Fukuyi jumped onto his back and teasingly asked if he'd been jealous of Tanaka. Taeyu blushed but admitted he was, just a little. Hearing that, Fukuyi laughed and teased him, saying he was super easy to read. Embarrassed, Taeyu asked what she was laughing about. She just brushed it off and said she was thinking about how cute he was. Meanwhile, in the distance, a lady with short black hair watched them closely. She didn't show herself, but it was clear she knew Fukuyi. Next morning, Taeyu was all dressed for work and said he was heading out early because he had a ton of work to do. But just as he was about to leave, his curvy wife in a short nightgown called out for him to wait. She asked with a flustered look if he wasn't forgetting something important, a goodbye kiss. Seeing him hesitate, Fukui reminded him this was the only chance they had, since company rules forbade public displays. Teiyu stepped closer and gave her a quick kiss on the cheek. When Fukui asked why not on the lips, he blushed and explained that if it was on the lips he wouldn't be able to control himself when his staff activates. As Teiyu left, Fukui sat down on the floor, overwhelmed with feelings. She blushed and groaned, frustrated that he'd left her with a full-on coochie crisis. Meanwhile, as Teiyu walked to work, he noticed a drunk guy in a cap approaching a short-haired woman. The man was trying to get her to go out with him, saying he didn't want to drink alone and just wanted to have fun. But the emo-looking girl just wanted to smoke in peace. She told him she didn't have time for games and told him to go bother someone else. Annoyed, the drunk man grabbed her wrist and said that since they were both single, they should be together. She struggled to pull away. Seeing this, Teiyu stepped in. The girl glanced at Teiyu and realized she knew him from somewhere. After a second look, she remembered seeing him holding hands with Fukui. She wondered if they were a couple. Recognizing Teiyu, she broke free from the drunk and surprised him by saying Teiyu was her husband. The drunk guy got irritated but backed off. Once the man left, the girl thanked Teiyu. She explained she'd been smoking before work when the guy started bothering her. Teiyu tried to brush off the thanks, saying he hadn't really done anything. But the girl disagreed, saying everyone else pretended not to see what was happening, but he was the only one who stepped up. With a soft smile, she told him she thought he was pretty cool for that. Embarrassed, Teiyu insisted he still hadn't done much. When they finally got to the office, Teiyu was shocked to discover they worked at the same company. Short-haired girl pulled her ID from her bag, revealing her name was Akine and that she was a writer on the script team. Teiyu immediately recognized her as the writer whose scripts were masterpieces and had brought great attention to the company. But from her look, she didn't exactly fit the typical writer image. Akine explained they never met before because she usually worked from home. Teiyu showed her his own ID and introduced himself. After seeing his badge and realizing they all worked at the same place, Akine got thoughtful and soon headed inside. Not long after, Teiyu was walking down a quiet office corridor when Fukui, hiding behind a glass door, called him over. She surprised him by pulling him into the hiding spot, assuring him no one would see them. Curious, Teiyu asked what was going on. Fukui kissed his cheek and teased that it was revenge for the kiss he gave her that morning. Inside their secret spot, Fukui said they'd continue later at home, and Teiyu agreed. Meanwhile, outside, Akine listened to their hushed conversation. With a clearly suspicious smile, she muttered that what she'd just overheard was very interesting. Later that day, during lunch, Fukui walked through the corridor. As she passed the smoking area, she spotted a familiar face, Akine smoking her lungs black. The smoker greeted her, saying it had been a while since they last saw each other. Fukui replied that it was rare to see Akine at the company. Akine explained she was on her way to a presentation and asked when they last met. Fukui guessed it was when the game GalQuest was released. Akine joked she only finished the game thanks to Fukui's help, and Fukui teased that Akine had used her as a reference model. When Fukui said it had been 2 years since then, Akine's tone shifted. With a suspicious look, she asked if Fukui had got married during those 2 years. Caught off guard, Fukui nervously confirmed she was married. Akine pushed further, asking who her husband was. Trying to throw her off, Fukui said he worked in a completely different field from hers. For a brief moment, awkward tension settled between them. Trying to break the silence, Fukui smiled sheepishly and asked what the next game would be about. Akine explained it was supposed to be one of those popular Isekai games, but she had come up with a better theme. She said the new theme would focus on a secret office love affair. Fukui immediately regretted asking as nervousness hit her like a ton of bricks. Make things even more awkward, Fukui wondered aloud if changing the game's theme this late wouldn't cause problems. Akine looked at her in disbelief and asked what kind of person she thought she was. Just then, Teiyu walked down the corridor and saw his wife chatting with the writer. He had no clue how tense the conversation really was and thought they got along well. But then he remembered that at the office, he always had to stay on guard so no one found out about their marriage. But as Fukui noticed him staring, she threw their secrecy plan out the window and blew a kiss to her husband. Teiyu nearly died of embarrassment, and a coworker even asked if he was okay. Later that night, Fukui came home in a cheerful mood. Her husband, on the other hand, sat tensely on the couch. When their eyes met, both blushed. Teiyu then called his wife to sit beside him, and she eagerly accepted. There was an awkward tension between them, and they needed to break the ice. All this nervousness was because tonight was the night they planned to get intimate. Fukui took the lead, moving closer on the couch. With a soft gaze, she asked if he wanted to pick up where they left off. Trying hard to be a man, Teiyu said yes and gently laid her down on the couch. His eyes caught his wife's gaze, and he could see the desire in her eyes. Heart racing, he leaned in carefully, but then the nervous spongeball softpants panicked and kissed her forehead instead. Yukui, completely flushed, called his name and frustratedly reminded him that, as his wife, the kiss should be on the lips. Her husband awkwardly explained that the forehead kiss was because she looked really cute. His wife interrupted the moment to sniff her own neck, then asked if she smelled like rotten eggs or if her breath stank like a donkey's behind. Even though Taeyu denied it, she stayed suspicious and said she'd wash up first. With that, Taeyu accepted that he'd have to wait longer. But just then, the bathroom door opened, and Fukui, with a seductive look, asked if he wanted to shower with her. In an instant, Taeyu found himself under the water, heart racing, anxiously waiting for his wife. He thought about how they usually bathed separately, which only made him more nervous. Then the bathroom door opened, and Fukui appeared completely nude, announcing she was coming in. Taeyu quickly turned his head the other way, completely flustered. The poor guy was so shy he didn't know where to look, even though they were married. He stood up so she could sit where he had been leaning, but she said she was fine and grabbed some shampoo to wash his hair. As she started scrubbing, Taeyu finally relaxed, enjoying the massage, while Fukui enjoyed every moment of it too. She asked if it felt itchy, and Taeyu joked that it felt more like he was at a beauty salon. He offered to wash her hair, but she said her long hair would be a hassle. She suggested they do something more interesting instead. They switched spots in the shower. This time, Taeyu held the sponge, scrubbing Fukui's back while feeling completely embarrassed. He thought about all the steps in her bathing routine that took an hour every day. No wonder they usually bathed separately. After he finished scrubbing her back, Fukui asked why he hadn't washed her front. Taeyu froze in shock but quickly agreed. He carefully lathered the soap, and when the sponge touched her soft curves, Fukui tensed up in a different way. Taeyu didn't realize she was enjoying it and immediately pulled away, apologizing. But Fukui said it was fine, feeling all kinds of emotions. When Taeyu complained about how hard it was to wash someone else, Fukui praised his technique, saying he did great. Once Taeyu was done with her back, Fukui took over and started scrubbing his back. Taeyu was confused, wondering if he should be behind her since she was taller. But something else caught his attention. Fukui was pressing her milk nozzles against his back, making him instantly hard and ready to splash. She leaned closer and said that since they used the same soap, he smelled just like always. He asked if he smelled like a mountain goat. She laughed and said no, adding that she liked his disgusting smell because it relaxed her. Then she complained that work kept them from spending enough time together. As she spoke, the bathroom's soothing atmosphere made her start to doze off. Noticing this, Taeyu warned her she'd catch a cold if she slept there. Seeing how tired she was, he turned and kissed her on the lips to seal the moment. Then he stood up proudly and praised his wife for doing great that day. The next day at work, tension filled the boardroom. Akane slammed her hand on the table in frustration and declared there was no way she'd let it happen. She asked her boss if he really wanted to cut the last interesting scene of the game just to save money. She insisted that a story worth watching until the end was the true heart of her job as a writer. Her boss disagreed. He said he understood her point but argued that a short, simple story was better than a long, complicated one, and that all they needed was a flashy description to sell the game. Fukui, angry at his words, stood to defend her colleague, but Akane waved it off, saying it was fine. She got up and said a long storyline was meaningless if players were just going to skip it anyway. Then she stormed out of the boardroom, ignoring Fukui's calls for her to come back. Akane stormed out of the company, feeling down as she walked toward the main road. She was so tired, she yawned and didn't notice a hand reaching out to her. The hand belonged to Taeyu, who grabbed her just in time and pulled her back before a speeding car could hit her. Panicked, he asked if she was okay. Akane said she was fine. When Akane mentioned how dangerous it was, the married man suddenly realized how tightly he'd been holding her waist, with her full chest pressed against him. Embarrassed, he quickly stepped back and apologized. Akane teased that despite his quiet look, he didn't seem like a reserved guy. Taeyu denied it, but Akane laughed and said she was joking. She thanked him for saving her life. Taeyu then remembered their earlier conversation and asked if everything was all right since she seemed distracted. Akane complained she hadn't been sleeping well because of the new project. Curious, Taeyu asked if she'd gotten into an argument at work, and Akane explained it was more than that. At that moment, Akane remembered her boss telling her to cut down her long story and make it shorter. Caught up in the moment, she accidentally admitted she'd been wondering if her work was actually that good. Realizing she said it out loud, she looked embarrassed, but Taeyu quickly reassured her, saying he thought her work was amazing. The married man showered her with praise, calling her writing well-crafted and interesting. Then he mentioned the game was going isekai and added that those stories could be a bit exaggerated and simple. But shyly, he said he was sure Akane would give the game a deeper meaning, and he was excited to see it. Akane listened carefully, a cigarette, or so Taeyu thought, dangling from her mouth. Taeyu apologized for talking so much and explained he was just a big fan of hers. Akane blushed and turned her face away, trying to hide how happy his words made her. Meanwhile, Taeyu panicked, worried he might have offended her. Holding the cigarette, Akine thought about how she could create a well-balanced story. After a moment, she smiled and said maybe she would end up making a masterpiece thanks to Taeyu's encouragement. Taeyu was shocked but thought her words were really cool. He then reminded her she hadn't lit her cigarette, and Akine revealed it was candy. It was another bright morning in the bazaar company. Inside, someone called Taeyu's name and greeted him with good morning. It was none other than Akine asking for his opinion on the new game story she had just written. The married man, so innocent, said she could do whatever she wanted, and Akine, all smiling, thanked him. Watching from the side was Fayuki, who was practically fuming with jealousy, seeing her husband speak so casually with the emo girl. That night at home, while Taeyu was slapping on his laptop, his wife approached him asking for a moment. He asked what the matter was and was surprised to see a tired Fukui, lamenting bitterly about how much attention he had been giving Akine. Taeyu had no idea what she was talking about, so his wife explained that she had been seeing him talk to the writer all the time at the office. She also said the other day she saw them walking to work together. Taeyu clarified that he was just a big fan of Akine and was helping her with ideas. He also assured her that the times they arrived at the office together, they had accidentally run into each other. But Fayuki was of the opinion that everything was indeed unfair. She said she would also want to talk to him at work, even though she knew she couldn't. To calm his wife, Taeyu then turned off the computer, leaned closer, and wiped away her tears. He then told her that he would make the most of the time they spent at home together. Hearing this, Fukui's mood instantly improved. She hugged him, saying that she loved her husband. Toyu, still a bit tensed, reasoned that he needed to keep a distance from Akine for the sake of his wife. The next day, during lunchtime, while stretching on his chair, Akine appeared and invited him to have lunch with her. But Taeyu made up an excuse about bringing food from home, and she accepted it. A few hours later, she tried to invite him to check out a place she had mentioned before. But Toyu panicked and rushed past her in the hallway as if he didn't see her. Unhappy, Akine scratched her head, trying to figure out what the whole drama was all about. The moment Toyu entered the elevator, Akine followed right behind him, very irritated. She moved inches close to him and slapped her hand against the wall, trapping him. She demanded to know if she had done something wrong and why Taeyu was avoiding her like a plague. Taeyu became tense due to the close proximity and nearly had a paralysis episode. When Akine demanded to know why, Taeyu finally explained that it was because his wife was jealous. Akine was shocked at first, but soon burst into laughter and asked if that was really the reason. Taeyu apologized and said he didn't know how to explain it to her. Akine then asked if she could request a favor, and the married man said he would do whatever was within his power to fulfill it. With terrible intentions, the writer seductively moved closer and asked him to come to her house that night. At the end of the workday, Fukui was finishing up some designs when she noticed her husband leaving. Assuming he was heading home, she decided it was time to wrap things up and leave, too. But as she was tidying her desk, she saw Akine whispering in Taeyu's ear, telling him they should get going. As they headed toward the door, the writer asked him what he wanted for dinner, and before he could answer, she suggested stopping by the supermarket. The conversation was just loud enough for Fukui to realize with shock that her husband was going to Akine's place. It felt strange since she knew nothing about any nighttime plans, and panic set in as she wondered if her husband was cheating on her. Later that night at Akine's apartment, the writer served Taeyu a beautiful dinner. He was immediately excited, impressed by how delicious everything looked. Noticing him blush, Akine asked why, but her phone rang, so she stepped away to take the call, leaving Taeyu alone. Suddenly, Taeyu heard creepy noises in the apartment and decided to check it out. That's when he found his wife stuck to the window, looking like a desperate lunatic. He screamed loudly, not caring that he was in someone else's apartment. The desperate wife immediately jumped on top of him, leaving Taeyu completely baffled about what she was doing there. Obviously, they couldn't talk properly, too scared that Akine might find out their secret. Just then, Akine finished her private call and walked back into the apartment, apologizing and explaining she'd gotten a work call. But when she looked around, Taeyu was nowhere to be found. That's because Fukui had pulled him into a closet and was squeezing the life out of him. When Taeyu asked why they were hiding, she just squeezed him tighter. In her head, Fukui knew that if they were caught like this, their marriage would be exposed, so she chose to stay silent. But then she figured that if they remained in this position, she wouldn't get to question her cheating husband. She had plenty of questions, but was interrupted when Taeyu, unknowingly, started squeezing her grapes, making her blush. His touch got her a little excited, and she said she was happy he wanted to be intimate with her. But just as Fukui explained that this wasn't the best place for plot action, Akine suddenly opened the closet door and found the couple tangled up in clothes. The ladies stared at each other for a moment, and Fukui was left speechless. Suddenly, Akine burst out laughing, slamming her hand on the table. When she finally calmed down, Fukui asked if the joke was over. She said she didn't mind being laughed at and promised next time she wouldn't hide, but made it clear that Taeyu was her man, and the tramp needed to find herself someone else. However, Akane just kept laughing like a maniac, while Taeyu tried to get Fukui's attention. He told her the writer already knew they were married. Akane laughed even harder and said she didn't need to find another man. She suddenly flashed her wedding ring, assuring them she was happy with her husband. Fukui was shocked, saying she had no idea, and asked when that happened. Akane replied that the same went for her. With everything out in the open, Fukui admitted she thought Taeyu was cheating on her. Taeyu asked if she hadn't seen Akane's message about a couple's dinner with her and her husband. Fukui said she hadn't received any message. Akane then said she knew Fukui would show up anyway, even uninvited. Fukui got furious and started arguing with Akane. To ease the tension, Akane announced she decooked a delicious meal for her too. Fukui said she was being forced to forgive her. Fukui noticed the place looked really fancy, and Akane revealed she was married to a doctor. When Fukui demanded to know the full story, someone suddenly entered the house. Akane then mentioned her husband had arrived and said she'd leave the rest to their imagination. Valentine's Day arrived, and with it came the usual exchange of chocolates. At work, Fukui handed out fancy chocolate boxes to her female coworkers. The women were excited, asking if the chocolates were made by a famous pastry chef, and Fukui confirmed they were. Tanaka shamelessly asked where his chocolate was. Reluctantly, Fukui gave him a tiny piece of chocolate about the size of his sausage stick. Then she turned away without another word and said she was taking the rest of the day off. Later, Fukui visited Akane's fancy home again. With chocolates spread out on the table, Fukui thanked Akane for letting her use the kitchen and asked how work was going. Akane said she was working from home that day and had already finished her tasks. Fukui then asked for help making Valentine's sweets since she wasn't very good at it, and Akane agreed. Fukui then looked up recipes online and then asked Akane if her husband liked sweets. A bit shy, the writer said yes, that her partner was a sucker for chocolate. Fukui laughed out loud. When Akane asked what was so funny, Fukui just said it was nothing. After finding the exact chocolate cake they liked, they decided to start on it. Taeyu's wife listed the ingredients needed while the writer said she would do the measurements. The problem was that Fukui obviously wasn't good with kitchen tasks and forgot a lot of things in the middle of the mess. As she moved around, she accidentally bumped her airbags into Akane's large fronts, causing a loud missile explosion. This made Fukui start laughing, and when Akane questioned her, she said the booba accident was just funny. After that, Fukui melted the chocolate to check if it was just right. As she tasted it, a drop accidentally fell onto her pleasure hills. Looking down at the mess on her milky jugs, Akane asked what she was doing. Fukui responded by offering Akane some chocolate, and to her surprise, Akane accepted the spoonful. Once the sweets were ready, they put the chocolates in the fridge to cool. Akane then offered Fukui a snack, but Fukui said she already had plenty of chocolates. Later that evening at home, Fukui boredly checked the time on her phone. Realizing it was already past 8, she worried that her husband still wasn't home. As she stood up to get something, Taeyu announced he was back. Excited, Fukui eagerly welcomed him and told him she had made chocolates for him. But then she remembered she'd left the sweets at Akane's house. Shocked and miserable, she dropped to the floor, feeling like the worst wife ever. To calm her down, Taeyu said it was okay. Fukui noticed how stressed he looked and asked if something was wrong. Taeyu explained he'd had a tough day and the bosses were furious. His wife said that sounded exhausting, and to comfort him, said she had something special for him. She started rummaging in the kitchen, trying to make something. After a while, she apologized for the wait and handed him a cup. Taeyu looked at it in disbelief and asked if it was hot chocolate. Fukui said it was to make up for the chocolates she'd forgotten at Akane's. She added that if he drank something warm, his heart would warm up too. Taeyu took a sip and said she was right. So with that, the couple spent Valentine's Day wrapped in each other's arms on the couch at home. The next night, Fukui lay in bed, staring at her phone. She had just ordered a love potion online from Temu. She smirked, imagining what she'd do with it and how it would affect her husband. In her wild imagination, Taeyu was heating up, shedding his clothes, saying he felt hot. She pictured him on top of her, giving his all, promising not to let her sleep that night. With the potion, Fukui hoped their love life would change, and she'd finally see a wilder side of Taeyu after dark. Later that night, Fukui prepared coffee for her husband and happily announced she had been sent home early, so they'd have the whole night alone together. As she made the coffee, she secretly dropped a few drops of the love potion into his drink. Meanwhile, the clueless husband sat at dinner, surprised at how quickly Fukui had made the coffee. He thanked her and started gulping it down without a care, while Fukui watched expectantly, waiting for the potion to take effect. Some time passed and Taeyu began to feel the effects of the drink. He asked if his wife was feeling hot too, and Fukui silently celebrated. The potion was working. Playing it cool, she said maybe the heater in the living room was too hot and that the bedroom must be cooler. Her husband agreed, unaware he was being played, and soon found himself lying in their bed. Fukui then entered the bedroom wearing a black Kim Kardashian thirst trap outfit, flashing a seductive look. She sat beside Taeyu and said she was feeling hot too. When she asked how she looked, the poor guy nervously replied that she looked beautiful. That made her happy, and in a low tone, she commented on how honest he was. Lying side by side, Taeyu started to doze off, then asked if he could be a little selfish that night. Fukui was already almost ripping her clothes off from excitement when he said that. Even though it was early, he said he wanted to ask her something. She immediately agreed, not knowing what it was, telling him he could do whatever he wanted. He hugged her and thanked her, while she waited desperately for things to heat up. But to her shock, he asked if they could just go to sleep, saying he was exhausted, leaving Fukui crying on the inside. The next morning, Fukui left a positive review for the fake product she bought online. She said she didn't know if the potion worked as an aphrodisiac, but it made her husband sleep like a baby, so in some way it helped. Sometime later in the bathroom, Fukui looked down at the scale and was shocked by the high number. She felt sad. Glancing in the mirror, she noticed her face looked puffy. Spending too much time at her desk had been hurting her posture, which was getting worse every day. Determined, Fukui loudly declared it was time to make a change. Her husband heard her from outside the bathroom and already felt nervous about what she might be planning. Next morning, Fukui woke up early, long before her husband, and checked her phone. It was 5:30 a.m., the perfect time to start her workout. She got out of bed, leaving her husband still asleep like a lazy sloth. After putting on her workout clothes, she moved to the living room and pushed the center table aside to make space. Then she connected her phone to the TV and picked a weight loss workout video to follow. Motivated, Fukui started bending, squatting, and striking poses that showed off her assets. With every yoga move, her huge cannons made it twice as hard. She kept struggling until she finally collapsed on the mat, sweaty and exhausted. Deciding yoga wasn't for her, she switched to running. Out on the city streets, Fukui jogged while simp guys couldn't stop staring and admiring her curves. With every step, her jiggle mountains bounced even more. Unaware of the attention, she enjoyed her run, thinking she'd easily lose 2 kilos at this pace. She didn't notice when she passed 3 guys nearby, one of them thinking how nice it was to see something that amazing in the morning. Back at the apartment, Taeyu was peacefully cooking breakfast, sizzling something in the pan. Fukui walked in and announced she was back. When Taeyu asked if she'd gone for a run, she confirmed and said she was exhausted. She said she really wanted a salad for breakfast. But Taeyu told her, since it was the weekend, he'd made something special. Fukui looked nervous as Taeyu placed a plate of pancakes with melted butter on the table. Drooling over how delicious it looked, she also worried that eating pancakes would waste all the hard work and the little progress she'd made that morning. She was ready to refuse, but Taeyu gave her an adorable smile and said he'd seen how hard she'd been working and made something she'd enjoy. Before she knew it, Fukui threw her arms around him, told him she loved him, and said she'd accept the pancakes. She chose a little happiness, even if it meant gaining some weight. At the entrance of a store, a small commotion was happening. Some guys kept bothering Akine, calling her hot mamacita and asking why she was alone during break time. Akine sighed and said she just wanted to smoke in peace. She told them straight up to leave her alone, but one of the guys said he liked how cold she was and asked if she wanted to hang out with them later. Just then, a man stepped out of the store and snatched Akine's cigarette away. Turning to the guys, he smiled and declared himself her husband. Intimidated, the guys said they didn't know she was married and finally left. Akine complained that her husband was late, and he apologized, saying the store had so many new sweets it took him a while to decide. He showed her the treats he'd bought, saying he also got some for her. Akine introduced this guy as Masato, her husband, and called him a silly man. Masato said it was time to head home and offered his hand to lead the way. But Akine stared at his outstretched hand for a moment and rejected it, telling him to stop being silly and rushing ahead alone. When Masato asked again, she refused once more. Out of love, Masato said just being by her side was enough. Akine thought about how he had always been this loving, affectionate guy, even in public. But she admitted she was different. Even though she loved him deeply, she couldn't be honest about her feelings. She remembered how amazing it was when he helped her with those guys, how she wanted to hold his hand, but her palms were sweaty. Akine revealed they'd tied the knot so fast, before their relationship had time to become honest and sweet. When Masato proposed on the 3rd day of dating, she accepted, thinking there was no way it could go wrong. Walking home with her husband, Akine realized it was their 3-month anniversary. Since they both had the next day off, she was really looking forward to making out that night. Back at home during dinner, Masato finished his plate and said the food was delicious as always. He thanked Akine for always picking the right meals. Trying not to give herself away, Akine joked that a doctor with poor health would be a disaster, though she remembered he often said similar things. After dinner, Akine got up and said she was going to take a bath. She knew Masato would tease her, as he always invited her to shower with him, but she always refused, saying she only bathed in the morning. She imagined a steamy shower scene with him in the bathroom. But just when she hoped he'd join her, the doctor's side of Masato took over. He warned that bathing right after eating could cause indigestion or a heart strain. So in the end, Akane ended up taking a long bath alone. Thinking about Fukui and Teiyu's happy marriage, Akane decided to ask Fukui for advice. She messaged her, asking how to be more like her with her husband. Fukui was caught off guard at first but suggested dressing more provocatively. Akane hadn't considered that, so she decided to surprise Masato by showing up in just a blouse. She worried it might be too much, but Masato got a nosebleed, and she teased him for how obvious it was that he liked it. Realizing she hadn't asked Fukui what to do next, Akane was soon called by her husband. He asked if she was trying to seduce him. Embarrassed and caught off guard, she denied it, saying she was just feeling hot and didn't desperately need his D or anything like that. Realizing she'd said too much, Masato apologized for asking and suggested she go cool off. But just as he was about to leave, Akane impulsively grabbed his shirt, asked him to wait, apologized, and admitted she couldn't be honest with her feelings. Masato whispered that's what he liked about her and suggested they try being honest in bed. Surprised, Akane agreed. The next day, she got a call from Fukui asking if her idea had worked. In response, Akane said she hadn't slept well and would talk to her later. Sometime later downtown, a boy in a black jacket was busy bullying a girl by snatching her hairpin, saying it didn't look good on her. The girl nervously asked for her hairpin back, but the boy kept teasing her, saying a girl with messy hair like hers could never be cute. Just as she was about to start crying, 2 adult women stepped in. Fukui told the bully he didn't need to take it that far, and Akane warned him to be careful that discrimination could get someone canceled these days. Taken aback, the boy asked who they were. Akane said they were just concerned passers-by who happened to witness the bullying. Irritated, Fukui explained to the clueless kid that if a girl tried to dress up, she could become cuter. But the black-haired boy insulted them, calling them ancient aunties trying too hard to stay young. Fukui imagined strangling him, but instead challenged the boy authoritatively to come back to the same place at the same time the next day. Fukui swore to make the girl freaking cute. With that, Fukui and Akane took the bullied girl down the street. Fukui suggested they buy new clothes, and Akane added they'd need skincare products too. The girl named Yuzuki couldn't help but think how beautiful the ladies helping her were. Yuzuki then called for their attention. She thanked them but said she'd always been this way. She didn't think changing would work and felt trying was a waste of time. Disappointed, Fukui snapped at her, asking if she couldn't be pretty on the inside too. Feeling confident, Akane chimed in, telling Yuzuki not to worry and to leave everything to them. Grateful, Yuzuki thanked them, and Fukui assured her they'd make the bully pay for what he did. The poor girl looked at the 2 women and wondered if she could really be as gorgeous as they were. Fukui first led them to a hair salon, where a beautiful woman with long black hair greeted them. Fukui apologized for the last-minute call, but the stylist said it was no problem. Meanwhile, Yuzuki was in awe of how beautiful the hairdresser was. Sitting in the makeover chair, Yuzuki confessed it was her first time at a beauty salon. Nervously, she explained that because they were poor, her mother always cut her hair, but lately, her mom had been too busy, so she hadn't had a haircut in a while. The hairstylist was kind and asked if it was okay to cut Yuzuki's hair or if she was scared. She asked again for confirmation, and Yuzuki quickly said it was no problem. The girl even added that if such a pretty woman was cutting her hair, she'd be more than happy. The hairstylist called Yuzuki a good girl and promised to make her look pretty. Sometime later, the stylist announced she was done. She showed Yuzuki her new look in the mirror, and the girl was mesmerized by how beautiful she looked. Her hair was much shorter, and her gorgeous eyes were clearly visible. Yuzuki barely recognized herself in the reflection. Fukui mentioned she had put a little makeup on her, but said Yuzuki was naturally beautiful. After the stunning transformation, Akane returned the flower hairpin the bully had taken back to Yuzuki. The girl looked at it and remembered the night before. That night, she had suffered another day of bullying at school, but knew it was because of her horrible hairstyle. Just as she entered the house, her mother greeted her excitedly and gave her the hairpin, saying she'd found it on the way home. Her mother said Yuzuki would look good wearing it. Yuzuki hadn't believed it much, but her mother thought she was cute and that the hairpin would look great on her. Back in the present, Yuzuki placed the hairpin in her hair. When Fukui asked if she was ready for the next day, Yuzuki smiled confidently and said yes. But before the day ended, Fukui leaned close and whispered she had one more thing to teach her. The next day, at the same time and place, Yuzuki met up with her bully. The same boy who had humiliated her was embarrassed when he saw how beautiful she'd become. He wondered if she had kept herself looking bad on purpose to avoid attention from other guys, but then realized that didn't make sense. Trying to play it cool, the foolish boy said the hairpin didn't suit her, and added that even if he were her boyfriend, he'd still think so. Yuzuki shot him a disdainful glare and asked why she would be interested in a cow face like his. The boy was shocked. He hadn't expected to be humiliated like that. But before he could say anything, Yuzuki walked off proudly, wondering if she'd used Fukui's technique right. Later that day at home, Fukui showed her husband a photo of herself with Akine and the schoolgirl and told him how they had grown closer to the girl. Teiyu said it must have been fun and briefly remembered his own school days. He recalled the day he first met Fukui, who would later become his wife. A flashback took him to a random classroom at school. Students were hanging around, gossiping since no teacher was present. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner, Teiyu was busy playing a cat game. Two girls nearby mocked him, saying he was always alone playing games like a weirdo. Teiyu heard them and felt irritated. Suddenly, manicured nails appeared on his desk. Then came a pair of huge snow globes, then Fukui's face, looking very interested in what he was playing on his phone. She complimented Teiyu's game character and was impressed he was at such a high level. Startled by the hot girl's presence, Teiyu listened as she excitedly said she liked the game too, though she wasn't lucky with the gacha. Feeling a bit embarrassed, Teiyu said she had scared him. Fukui didn't care and asked him to show her other games he liked. Nervously, Teiyu agreed. Just then, a classmate called Fukui to help with her makeup. Fukui said goodbye to her new friend, but said she would definitely see him again. He watched in shock as the prettiest girl in school walked away from his desk. He thought about how he never expected the hottest girl in school to even look his way, let alone talk to him. A second meeting happened at a bookstore downtown. Fukui was inside, trying to reach a book on the top shelf, but with her mighty milk jugs in the way, it was no surprise she was struggling. Just then, her future husband, Teiyu, walked in and was surprised to find her there having trouble. He wanted to help, but remembering he was shorter than an action figure left in the sun, he knew there was no way he could reach the book. Fukui was surprised to see him too. Thinking quickly, Teiyu grabbed a small step ladder nearby so she could climb up. Fukui was excited for the help and asked what book he was there to buy. Blushing, Teiyu said he was looking for a book on game programming. He showed it to her, already regretting it, thinking she'd make fun of him. But to his surprise, Fukui asked if he wanted to join her in making a video game. Before he could even react, she volunteered to do the drawings. Surprised, Teiyu asked if Fukui knew how to draw, and she confirmed she did. She showed him a sketch on her phone, and Teiyu got really excited. He praised the artwork, saying it was great and wished he could draw like that. Fukui explained her mother was an illustrator, and since she admired her, she also drew from time to time. Teiyu thought her talent was really cool. As they got closer, they decided to make a simulation game using Fukui's drawings. Teiyu stayed home studying programming and worked on the game's engineering, while Fukui created several character designs. Even at school, they talked about game development, and their classmates were jealous of the attention Teiyu got from the most popular girl. One day, Fukui visited Teiyu's place. Since it was the first time a girl had ever been in his room, Teiyu's heart hit pause instantly. When Fukui complimented him on how organized his place was, Teiyu said it was because he didn't have many things. Fukui said he earned Riz points from her for being tidy. Teiyu then opened his laptop so they could work on the game together. Reading the story, Fukui realized Teiyu was stuck on how to write the scene after a character confessed love, specifically the kissing scene. Blushing, Teiyu admitted he never kissed anyone and didn't know how to describe it. Fukui understood, and with a flustered face, asked if he wanted to try kissing her to get some experience. With no response, Fukui asked again if Teiyu wanted to kiss her. Disoriented, he stared at her, unsure how to react or respond. But Fukui kept looking at him with an expectant expression. His heart pounded a million beats per minute as his eyes locked onto her lips. Finally, he summoned the courage and asked why they should kiss since they weren't even dating. Fukui insisted that it would be better if he had some experience. Just as Teiyu was about to agree, his mother barged into the room without knocking, ruining the moment. She offered them some sweets but was shocked by the tense atmosphere. She couldn't help but comment on how awkward the situation was. Teiyu immediately scolded her for barging in, but she laughed and told him not to go overboard, even if Fukui was his first girlfriend. Teiyu insisted Fukui wasn't his girlfriend. Meanwhile, Fukui laughed hard, watching the comedy between her future mother-in-law and husband. Eventually, Teiyu kicked his mother out, but before leaving, she said she'd be waiting for Fukui to become her daughter-in-law. Teiyu apologized to Fukui for his mother's inappropriate comments, but she didn't mind. She said she hadn't realized he was like that with his family and actually found it kind of charming. Fukui added that she should apologize for going too far. She said she'd find a way to make it up to his mom, and Teiyu thanked her. After a brief, awkward pause, Teiyu thought that if Fukui was writing the kiss scene, she must have some experience in that area. Still in the flashback, on another day at school, Teiyu rushed through the hallway, clutching his laptop like his life depended on it. The game was finally finished, and he needed to tell Fukui. When he found her in the hallway, he called for her attention. Before he could say anything, two smug boys approached Fukui. One of them asked if she wasn't spending too much time with the certified loser. Confidently placing his hand on her shoulder, he said she should hang out with them instead. Fukui immediately told him not to touch her. Though Teiyu wasn't great at dealing with the popular kids, he found courage and asked the boy to respect what Fukui said. Suddenly, another boy shoved Teiyu hard, asking what an otaku had to say. Teiyu's laptop fell to the floor from the push. Fukui was worried about it, but the boy laughed and said it was Teiyu's fault for bringing a laptop to school. Fukui quickly picked up the device and asked if it was okay. Teiyu said he hoped so and then assured her that he had a backup. Despite everything, Fukui stood her ground and said she wasn't going anywhere with them. The boys asked why, and she explained that she and Teiyu were making a game together with her in charge of the art. The students surrounding them burst into laughter, saying her story didn't make any sense. Watching Fukui get humiliated, Teiyu raised his voice to defend her, saying that wasn't true. He loudly said Fukui made beautiful and cute drawings. One of the smug boys came up behind him and asked if he really liked Fukui that much to stand up for her. Gathering his courage, Teiyu declared for everyone to hear that, yes, he did like Fukui. The entire school was shocked by his boldness. Teiyu immediately realized the huge mistake he'd made. He said those words so naturally and started wondering if his relationship with Fukui would end right there. With a smug tone, one of the boys told Fukui to just dump the loser already. But surprisingly, Fukui was actually moved by Teiyu's confession. Fukui's face instantly flushed red, and for the first time she was left speechless. The whole school was shocked by her reaction. Trying to play it cool, Fukui said her response was just what anyone would do after getting a sudden love confession. The smug boys remembered she was usually never this quiet and calm when others confessed to her. Teiyu called her name again, trying to get her attention, but Fukui ran away, completely embarrassed. She sprinted down the hall toward the school entrance when suddenly someone grabbed her wrist. Startled, Fukui almost screamed. It was Teiyu, panting hard, asking her to wait and stop running. She stopped and worriedly asked if he was okay. Teiyu ignored the question but commented on how incredibly fast she was. Fukui apologized for running and said she just couldn't handle the confession. Teiyu said it was his fault and that it must be annoying to have someone like him like her, especially when that person confessed in front of so many people. Before he could say anything else depressing, Fukui snapped at him, yelling and asking why he had such low self-esteem. She reminded him that the first time they talked was when he was playing a game. Fukui revealed her mother had worked on that game, and even though it wasn't very popular, seeing him enjoy it made her really happy. She also talked about how everyone used to make fun of her drawings, but the first time Teiyu saw them, he loved them and even praised her. Finally, she said she had a lot of fun developing the video game with him, and what she was really trying to say was that she had fallen deeply in love with him. For a moment, Teiyu's brain short-circuited and he could only scream. Trembling, he asked if he'd heard her right, and Fukui confirmed it. Teiyu said the love she meant must be friendship, not romance, but Fukui interrupted, asking if he wanted to kiss her now. To Teiyu's shock, she said this time it was for real. She confessed that last time she asked, she actually wanted to make out. Summoning all his courage, Teiyu kissed her on the cheek and was about to leave, but Fukui grabbed his hand. Flustered, she said a kiss on the lips was what really mattered. She moved closer, about to kiss him, when the bell rang. Teiyu said it was time to go back to class. Lost in the moment, Fukui asked if they could skip class together. Teiyu agreed, and the two shared their first real kiss. They kissed for hours in the open schoolyard, and after finally overcoming their shyness, they smiled at each other, happy to be together. Back in the present, Fukui rested her phone on the table, smiling as she clung to her husband's arm. Teiyu noticed her blushing and asked what was on her mind. Fukui said she was just thinking about their teenage years. Teiyu said he was too. Fukui said Teiyu hadn't changed a bit, but he tried to argue that he'd grown a little. With a deeply affectionate look, Fukui asked if they could stay together forever, and Teiyu said, of course, that was what he wanted too. Lost in the romantic moment, the couple hugged happily. Meanwhile, somewhere else, a woman with long dark hair sat in a dimly lit room, searching how to make someone get divorced on her computer. It was another day at the couple's place. Fukui checked the thermometer and saw that the temperature was high. She was shocked to discover Teiyu had a fever. Lying in bed, Teiyu apologized for making her worry. Even though he was sick, he still wanted to go to work. But Fukui called him a corporate slave, forcing him to give in and stay home. He promised he'd get better if he rested and urged her to hurry so she wouldn't be late. He agreed, and just as she was about to take off her mask for a goodbye kiss, maybe even catch his cold, he stopped her, saying under no circumstances would he let her do that. Seeing how firm and decisive Teiyu was made Fukui's heart race, even with a fever. She wondered if he'd always been this charming. Not willing to give up, she climbed onto the bed and asked for at least a little smooching. She hugged her husband with her melons, trying to give him energy through her massive medicinal parachute. Teiyu blushed and thanked her for the help. Fukui found him adorable and almost clapped right then, even though he was sick. But she thought it was best to take it slow so they could flirt more later. She left for work, telling him to let her know if anything happened. Later that afternoon, Taeyu checked his phone, past 1 o'clock. It was time to take his medicine. He got out of bed and headed to the kitchen, but realized his fever was worse than he thought. Leaning on the counter, he sent a message to his wife, asking her to bring some things when she came home. But his health grew so fragile that his phone slipped from his hand and fell to the floor. Then he collapsed unconscious on the kitchen floor. Several hours later, someone unexpected unlocked the apartment door. A woman wearing dark stockings and carrying a bag entered. With long black hair, she looked like the same woman who had once searched online for ways to get a divorce. Taeyu woke up shivering and burning with fever. Hearing someone call his name, he asked if it was his wife. The strange woman said she was lucky to have a spare key and asked if he had a fever. She reflected on how Taeyu's health had always been fragile and said she couldn't believe his wife left him alone like this. She added that he shouldn't have married an extroverted woman and should have chosen someone like her, a gloomy girl with Harley Quinn vibes. At that moment, Taeyu recognized the voice and asked what she was doing in his apartment. He called her Satsuki, and she replied, saying it had been a while since they last saw each other. Carrying the weak Taeyu like a Disney princess, she headed out of the apartment, assuring him she would take good care of him. Who is this Satsuki, and what does she want with Taeyu? Comment, "And my hot wife," if you're excited to see what happens next in part 2. If you enjoyed the story, smash that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for content like this. As always, thanks for watching.